Zero water.
We're spending all of tonight's show on a single topic, something we rarely do, but we think it's worth it. We're still unraveling the contents of today's FBI memo. Some are already calling for even more documents to be released. Could declassifying this have set a new precedent for transparency and given you a better sense of what your government is doing? That's the hope. Jonathan Turley is a professor at George Washington University, and he joins us tonight. Jonathan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
So this was the explicit concern of the agencies, including the Department of Justice, in releasing this memo, the Nunes memo. If we release this, we're going to have to start telling the public a lot more about what we're doing, and we don't want to. Will they have to?
Well, that's what's most disturbing about this. Regardless of the content of the memo, you have this disconnect between what the FBI said, what Democratic members said about the release of this memo. Those of us who've been working in national security cases a long time expected there to be some type of footprint of sources and methods. There wasn't. This thing wasn't even remotely classified. And that really concerns a lot of us because it's the use of classification laws for tactical purposes. That if you look at what the FBI said, they said, we want this thing to remain classified because it's inaccurate due to omissions. Well, that's complaining about how the facts are being portrayed, not that they are classified. And many critics have said for years that the FBI and other agencies have been classifying material to avoid embarrassment. And this may be the most public and relatively rare example of that. There's nothing remotely in this memo that justifies the rhetoric used by Minority Leader Pelosi, Ranking Member Schiff. They all said that there would be dire consequences. And the FBI director and the FBI said that there would be grave problems that would arise with the release. And then you look at the memo and it's sort of an empty grave.
So the Freedom of Information Act, as I understand it, says unless government has a compelling reason to keep something secret, it has to release everything unless it can show it shouldn't because it belongs to the public. But it seems in Washington, the instinct is the opposite. Everything is classified unless there's political pressure to declassify.
I think that's right. I think one thing that we should be able to agree on is take a look at this memo. Anyone looking at this memo can see that it was written to avoid sources and methods. It's basically what we had already heard, with the difference is that there was discussions of testimony and other details, but there's no disclosures of new sources. It was confirming that the dossier was a critical part, if not the determinative part, in securing that FISA order. So the question returns us to, why did all these members say that this would jeopardize national security? We can have disagreements about what to do with the FBI. We should not have disagreements about something like this. When you say that there's a national security risk about a document being released, and it is something of this kind that doesn't have any sources of methods or sensitive information, it's a problem because that's lying to the American people.
No, that's exactly right. And we actually have a member of the Intel Committee on in a minute. I'm going to lead with that question right there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Jonathan Turley. Just how big a scale? Of course, most media outlets have spent far more time and effort covering the FBI memo's release than the actual allegations contained in the memo itself. It's almost like the allegations, which are that the U.S. government illegitimately spied on its own citizens, barely matter to them. They don't care about you or something. It's funny. Andrew Klavan is a contributing editor at City Journal. Terry Turchi is a former FBI Deputy Assistant Director for Counterterrorism, and they both join us tonight. Terry, first to you, since this pertains to the agency you spent so much time at. You're hearing people on other channels, there's almost a chorus of it, and it's becoming almost hysterical, I would say, that people who are interested in seeing this information or have questions about the FBI are unpatriotic, that they are insulting the men and women of the FBI. Do you think that?
No, I don't think that at all, Tucker. In fact, everything the FBI does should be out in the open, and we should be questioning it. And certainly we should be having questions about things like this. Nothing about any of these cases and what has been now confirmed in the memo have ever looked normal. And we have to ask ourselves, why were so many safeguards and guidelines and procedures that we always followed, never followed here? And I'll say one more thing to that. When I left the FBI and when I went into the FBI, we had a saying that you don't want to even just be concerned about propriety and the propriety of what you do. You also want to be equally concerned about the appearance of impropriety. And in fact, I have a lot of friends and colleagues that got in a lot of trouble because of the appearance of impropriety. And this has that at the very minimum written all over it.
Yeah. And so you don't, just to make sure I'm absolutely clear on this, you don't feel diminished as a veteran of the FBI when people ask questions about its behavior?
Not at all. And in fact, I've talked to a lot of friends in the FBI and outside, and all of us are concerned about the irregularities of this and the top level of the FBI in the last few months.
Yeah, well, I can certainly see why. So, Mr. Clavin, what do you make of the press coverage of this? Do you think it has been designed to serve the public interest or something else?
Oh, I think it's a scandal within a scandal, and almost as bad as the scandal in the FBI. I mean, we just finished watching Spielberg's movie, The Post, about how brave the Washington Post was to defy the Nixon administration and bring out the Pentagon Papers despite their cries that would hurt national security. Right. Now suddenly national security is sacrosanct and more important than information. I remember decades of the left squealing about J. Edgar Hoover and his unjustified wiretaps, and now suddenly we're told that unjustified wiretapping is a nothing burger. You know, the press has done nothing for this past year but whine about how Donald Trump has slapped them back and forth. But now, when it comes to releasing information, this is information that in no way damaged the public good, in no way damaged our national security. The press, the people who are supposed to speak truth to power and about power, are trying to cover it up and suppress it and spin it to make it less important. It's actually appalling, and it just brings that old Latin tag, you know, who will guard the guardians? If we've lost a press that really cares about the truth, if we've lost a press willing to hold any powerful person to high standards, then we've lost the people who are supposed to guard.
But how does a journalist, how does someone who calls himself a journalist, whose default position you would think would always be more information, as long as there's no grave downside, how does that person argue against showing the public things it's entitled to see?
It's amazing, and I really do think it is a holdover from the Obama administration, an administration that turned the federal government essentially into a Chicago-style machine full of cronies and corruption and outward malfeasance. I mean, malfeasance we could see, like the IRS scandal, while the press stood by, afraid, I think, to lay a finger on a president who they looked at as the first black president, certainly, and as the spokesman for their point of view, their ideological point of view. And they didn't want to touch him. And when you have no press, the government is going to get out of control, and the Obama administration did.
Very quickly, Mr. Churchy, do you think that it's in the FBI's interest to declassify what it can as it pertains to this investigation? You know, things that don't obviously jeopardize our national security, but to the extent it can, tell us more.
The natural tendency for me and any other FBI official would be say no, but in this instance, the answer is definitely yes. This goes way beyond what the FBI does, what the case is about, or what this particular series of circumstances is about. This goes right to the idea of civil liberties and the balance that the FBI is responsible for ensuring between criminal investigations, national security, and civil liberties. And we messed up. And we just simply have to get this out. The sooner we do, the sooner people see as much as they can see and as much as is safe to show them as from a national security perspective, the better off we'll all be. Because right now, as we've seen today, national security wasn't the argument for this.
No, they lied about that. Thank you both. That was really interesting. I appreciate your perspective.
Thanks, Tucker.